as a light tower, but in 1861 the Civil War was being fought and they didn't want the light shining then, so it was extinguished until after the war. Then it was reignited. Lighthouse keepers maintained it up until around 1909, and that's the last record that we have where they maintained the lights and lighthouse keepers were active in keeping the lights going.
Where the Tybee light shines in historic significance, the Cockspur light prevails in tales of romance, solitude, and treachery, characteristics often associated with lighthouses and their keepers.
In one case, a man went out in the storm and his boat overturned and he was killed. Intriguingly enough, his widow, Mary, became the lighthouse keeper in the period that followed. Another tragic case involved a man who came out with his two sons, again in a very bad storm. The boat overturned and the boys were able to hang on to the boat. It washed ashore in South Carolina on Defusky Island, but the lighthouse keeper himself was lost and they never found his body.
And then there's the tale of the legendary waving girl, Florence Martis. A statue in her honor stands on Savannah's River Street.
She used to greet the ships coming in and then wave to the ships going out of Savannah. And during the day she'd be waving a white handkerchief. In the evening she would use a lantern so that they could see her. And it became internationally known. The ships came from all over the world into the port of Savannah, and the word spread quickly throughout the world that this very gracious young lady would be waving them a welcome coming in and waving them a departure going out.
It has been almost 150 years since this structure was first built on an oyster bed in 1848. Now it is the job of the National Park Service to maintain and restore the Cockspur light to its original splendor.
Just as it was difficult for those folks 100 years ago to try to maintain it, it is for us today.
It is a never-ending and expensive chore, but one the National Park Service is willing to do in the name of preserving history.
We essentially grew from the coastlines in. When people first arrived here, there weren't roads and railroads and things. People got around by boat. And these lighthouses were one of the important ways that they were able to navigate the waters. So for an understanding of the history of the United States, I think one has to have an understanding of the lighthouses and the role that they played in the navigation and the settling of this country.
Both the Cockspur and Tybee lights are getting a much-needed facelift, but you can still appreciate their beauty, just as Longfellow appreciated the lighthouses so many years ago. He wrote, "Steadfast, serene, immovable, the same, year after year, through all the silent night, burns on forevermore, that quenchless flame shines on, that inextinguishable light." These are some of the sights and sounds of the lower Altamaha River Watershed that the Nature Conservancy of Georgia seeks to preserve. To get a better understanding of the Conservancy's work along the Altamaha, I took a tour of the area and met some of the partners who are helping the Conservancy maintain and understand the natural communities that exist here. Our day began bright and early on Butler Island.
Today is Dullsville. We've had less than 10 birds so far, and we've been at it for 2 hours. This is not good.
Don and Doris Kors have been tracking the migration patterns of birds in South Georgia for 20 years.
And
on a good day, they can band anywhere from 85 to 200 birds.
There are a lot of things you can learn with bird banding. Number one, we learn to some degree where the birds come from and where they go to, and we've established places that they stop. Most people think that if the bird's got a place to breed and a place to stay in the wintertime, it's great. But it's got to have a cafeteria along the way. This Butler Island happens to be one place.
One place, but not just any place. It is a popular stop for birds traveling between the Caribbean and North America. And surprisingly, birds from other regions have been known to stop here.
The prize was last year when My wife banded a northern water thrush, a little warbler, here, and 18 days later it was caught in Venezuela by a bird bander. And he released it alive. We knew they went into the Caribbean. Now we know they go into South America in the northern part, particularly Venezuela, but maybe some of the other small countries in that area that have suitable habitat.
If the Butler Island habitat were altered in some way, warblers like the ones banded on this day would lose a valuable stop along their migration route. That's valuable information to the Conservancy.
With the Nature Conservancy, we have a very strong friendly relationship. We have done some bird routes studying the populations in different areas for them. And their people come out here because they're basically outdoor people.
Outdoor people with a mission to build relationships with partners like the Corps. It's a relationship that fits into the bigger picture of protecting the lower Altamaha River Watershed. The goals of the Conservancy's Altamah River project are to maintain the hydrology of the river, to protect a continuous floodplain corridor, and to protect areas that contain rare plants, animals, and natural communities. Botanist Keith Tassin pointed out some of these natural communities as we floated along the Altamaha.
This creek that we're entering now is called Hammersmith Creek. Forms the border with one of our newest preserves. This was donated to us last year by the Jones family of Sea Island. It's about a 350-acre marsh and swamp island near the mouth of the Altamaha. It's probably got about 40-50 acres of pretty mature swamp forest, tidal bald cypress tupelo forest, which is a rare community. There's probably 80 or 90 plant species in here, where further upriver you have maybe 20 to 25. Along the edge of the bends in this creek here is what we call tidal freshwater marsh. That only occurs in the lower part of the river as well. This is the false dragonhead, also known as obedient plant. This plant is real habitat specific. It only occurs at the mouths of some of the rivers in the southeast in these tidal portions. During high tide, the pickerelweed grows right along the river. The manatees come up and they're able just to pull it up right by the roots and just eat the whole plant, kind of like a cow eats grass. And that is another name for a manatee, it's a sea cow.
Manatees aren't the only endangered animals that the river supports. The loggerhead turtle is another endangered species that dwells near the mouth of the Altamaha. While we didn't see a loggerhead, we did spot dolphins. There he is. Dolphins don't usually swim this far upriver, but there seems to be something new and different to see on the Altamaha every day. No wonder it's been compared to the Amazon and designated by the Conservancy as one of the last great places. Christy Lambert is the director of the Altamaha Bioreserve Project. She joined us later as we headed further upriver.
There's a very diverse array of lands that make up the watershed in the Altamaha River. It ranges from these aquatic areas such as the river itself back to the floodplain, and then some uplands that run parallel to the floodplain. So everything from very wet to these very dry areas.
The longleaf pine areas are of particular interest to some of the Conservancy's industrial partners, like Georgia Pacific.
When we first started working on this project back in 1991, we came down and we wanted to meet with some of the landowners along the river. And we sat down, for example, with the timber industries along the river.
They bring a lot of expertise, a lot of biological expertise to the table. We bring a lot of forestry expertise to the table and can talk about the different kinds of management options we would have.
When we walk through the forest, we see it. We see certain things, and then when forest managers are walking through, or foresters are walking through, they're seeing it a different perspective. And so by all of us going out and talking about things and walking through together, then we're learning from one another.
I was surprised to learn just how important foresters can be to the watershed, from harvesting trees to managing fires. All of this new information was a lot to digest, But in simple terms, the Nature Conservancy and partners like Georgia Pacific, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and the Corps are helping to preserve the Altamaha River, the land that surrounds it, and the plants and animals that call this place home.
Out here is life.
Poetry.